the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week. And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua. And the question today is, how does navigating complex legal battles like commercial litigation and all that, you know, legal battles that we face, how does that compare to the twists and turns of high stakes chess game? Well, our guest today is going to answer that question or going to try it and help us get an idea of that question today. Thomas J. Frank is a commercial litigator specializing in bankruptcy, real estate, foreclosure, and business dispute. He began his legal career at a boutique bankruptcy firm in Syosset, Long Island. Thomas has represented debtors, creditors, and trustees in bankruptcy matters and has litigated commercial cases in both state and federal courts. Born and raised in Queens, New York, he attended St. John's University School of Law, where he was an executive board member of the Moot Court Honor Society. He clerked for judges in the Supreme Court of Queens County before joining the Green Spoon Martyr LLP, representing leaders and mortgage servicers. In July 2018, Thomas founded the Frank Law Firm PC, which provides a range of legal services for businesses in Long Island and New York City. His firm handles corporate disputes, contracts, foreclosures, bankruptcy, real estate matters, you name it. Thomas is licensed to practice law in Florida, New York, and in New Jersey. And today he joins us to share his stories and his practice and his expertise and try to answer that question that we just asked earlier. Tom, how are you doing? How is your day? Thank you for coming on here.
Thank you for that introduction, Josh. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's always interesting to have, you know, successful people in their, in their fields, and that's who we try to invite in this show, and get uh, insights and stories from them, and wisdom from them, and really, you know, that's what we try to do. After all, the second name of the show is story, right? Business stories. So it's not all
Right.
business. We talk about stories as well. So, Tom, I started off with this all the time, which is, what is the story of Thomas J. Frank? Did you always know you were going to be a lawyer when you were a child? What were the pivotal experiences in your life that led you to being a lawyer today?
I didn't plan to be an attorney.
Mhm.
Certainly not when I was a kid or a teenager. So I grew up in Queens, New York, and
Mhm.
like the town I grew up in was very blue collar, so there wasn't a lot of attorneys around.
Yep.
I'm the first attorney in my family, so it wasn't like somebody I knew closely was an attorney, and I was like, oh, that's something I could, in theory, be. So it was never something I thought about being until I was like 19, 20 was when I decided to be an attorney, where I,
Uh huh.
decided I was going to take that course of action.
Hmm.
So it was not something that was really there.
Right.
Uh, what happened was I was in college and I just wasn't doing well in college
Okay.
because I didn't care. I was having fun. That's all I really wanted to do was have fun with my friends.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so my grades slipped, and that was kind of it. And my mother said something to me once that I'll never forget.
Okay.
And she said, "You're turning into a bum."
Ooh.
And from your mother, who's an Italian American woman from Queens, New York, that was like the worst thing you could call somebody.
Hmm.
So at I think I was 19, I said, "What's the opposite of a bum?" And the first word that came to my mind was attorney,
Wow.
and that was it. And like ever since then, I changed my major right after that. My grades went up. I went to law school. It was just, I think I think the groundwork for me to be an attorney was always there,
Right.
but I think I had told myself that it was not possible when I
Oh,
was
okay.
younger. So not to bother with it. But my mother's calling me that was like just the right amount of motivation I needed.
Right.
And I said to myself, "You're not messing around anymore."
Hmm.
And that was it.
The
That
rest was
happened.
history,
Yeah, the
basically.
rest is exactly, exactly.
We all need that little push from our mothers. The world really does need mothers, Hot Tom, because that is quite the turn for you. And like you said, the worst being called, but at the same time, it's just interesting how you say that the opposite of bum, that you thought the first thing you thought of was being an attorney. Like, but wow, of course it was an attorney, right? But
It was a good thing I didn't pick doctor because I would have never been able to become a doctor. But
yeah,
I
I was
picked the
going
one
to
I could.
say it's either an attorney or a doctor, right?
Right. Right.
But so you said that the groundwork and the foundation of being a lawyer has always been there, or of being an attorney has always been there for you. What do you think this groundwork was? What do you think that part of your personality, perhaps part of the way you were thinking? What do you think that was?
I think a good attorney is someone who is searching for truth,
Oh wow.
right? Whatever actually happened, they're searching for it, and they're like that in other things, not just their profession.
Okay.
So if they're
Interesting.
watching a thriller movie or they're reading a book,
Hmm.
they're trying to figure out what happened before the book tells them or the movie tells them.
Right.
They're
Interesting.
constantly in that search for facts, and they're
Hmm.
constantly observing their surroundings to try to
Hmm.
figure out what's going on or what's going to happen. And that type of mindset lends itself to the legal profession. So before I decided to become a lawyer, I was always a very observant kid. I
Hmm.
always picked up things that were going on. I always paid attention to little
Uh-huh.
details,
Hmm.
little idiosyncrasies of people. Like my friends would tell you all the time, Tommy can tell you what I was wearing the first day I met him 20 years ago. He
Interesting.
could tell, he could tell you where he first met you, what you guys were doing, who was there, all these funny things that my friends, like my childhood friends will say, you know, you could imagine a bunch of
That's very interesting.
characters.
So it's like,
Yeah, a bunch of characters from Queens, New York. Hey Tom, what was I wearing when we met in second grade? And I'm like, oh, you were wearing, this and that. And it's just I was always very observant that way. And I was a huge history buff. I always
and
loved it. So those things kind of lend to themselves to the legal profession. But at the time, you don't realize it. You're just like, oh, I like
of course,
history and I like,
yeah.
you know, these other things that just intrigue me. You don't realize that they would lead to a legal profession, but when you look back at it, it makes sense.
And here we are today, and it's a gift. It must be a natural gift, like a sort of like a gift of memory, a gift of probably a photographic memory as well, a form of photographic memory as well, or like just a special kind of a natural talent that allows you to pick up on those details. And of course, I can see why it would apply to your cases, to your legal cases, to the legal aspect. Of course, is very important, right? Could you share to us some examples of that? But first, before we really get into that, because your specialization is commercial litigation, talk to us a little bit about that experience. Talk to us about the key strategies that you focus on to successfully prosecute and defend, and what is it that really separates commercial litigation, in all the other fields in both state and federal court.
So, well, the good thing about commercial litigation is if you're somebody who's interested by a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get it in commercial litigation because it
Ah,
so many
interesting.
different things falls under that huge umbrella. It could
Hmm.
be as simple as a dispute between a lender and the debtor.
Yeah.
It could be a dispute on a contract between any two people about any given thing. So,
Yes.
one case is a dispute between a landlord and a tenant for the breach of a commercial lease.
Uh-huh.
The other is the breach of my client who leased a 150-foot yacht to somebody else to use for charter cruises,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So the principles are the same, the procedural nuances are the same,
Mm-hmm.
but the facts are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
One has something to do with, maritime law and leasing a
Yes.
boat
Yes.
in the waters of New York City and around in that area.
Mm-hmm.
The other has something to do with a building, right? It has to do with real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps you intrigued because there's always something different. You're applying the same rules to
Very
it,
interesting.
but you have to be on a fact-finding mission.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
what you said in the beginning of the show was comparing commercial litigation to chess. The funny
Mm-hmm.
thing is, I don't play chess, which is I'm ashamed to say, but I have watched the show The Queen's Gambit, so I know a little bit about it,
Right. Okay.
right?
Okay.
So from my understanding, the whole concept of chess is trying to anticipate your adversary's next move
Mm-hmm.
and how you position your pieces to box them in
Mm-hmm.
to the point where you have checkmate.
Yes.
Commercial litigation is very similar to that, although not exactly the same,
Right.
because the the win
Mm-hmm.
is not the same as chess. It can be
Okay.
sometimes. It
Okay.
could be I win, you lose. It could be zero sum
Right.
sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not always. So
Mm-hmm.
if we get a case where, you know, client breached a contract for $1 million and they're suing our client,
Right.
or
Mm-hmm.
vice versa, we're suing them,
Of course.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They owe our client 100 grand, a
Mm-hmm.
million dollars.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a couple of things, not just our legal remedies. We're looking at the
Right.
contract. We're looking at, okay, what rights do we have under the contract? Then we're
Uh-huh.
looking at the law. What rights do we have under the law?
Uh-huh.
Then we're looking at the facts. They owe us X. They didn't remit X, so we could sue for Y.
Interesting.
But what other intangibles are at play?
Mm-hmm.
Who is running the company that we're suing?
Mm-hmm.
Are they businessmen and women, or are
Mm-hmm.
they a mom and pop governed by, you know, personality nuances that make them irrational?
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Is it family run? What's the dynamic within the
Yes.
family? Does
Yes.
one person have more say than the other? So
Yes.
then you have to really assess your adversary, and am I ever going to be able to get to a settlement with the people on the
Interesting.
other side?
Interesting.
Sometimes it's abundantly clear right from
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. We're reasonable people on our side, they're reasonable people on their side. They had a
Mm-hmm.
default.
Okay.
Let's work together because a
Yep.
lawsuit rarely helps anybody. Sometimes that's not the case.
Sometimes
Sometimes
doesn't
it's
happen.
very clear. Yeah, sometimes it's clear from the beginning that the person on the other side or persons are not reasonable,
Mm-hmm.
or they are governed by their emotions, and
Precisely.
there's just too much volatility for you to
Mm-hmm.
bank on a resolution happening, in which case your strategy has to change and say, listen, I'm not going to get what I need out of this through settlement. It's just unlikely. Let me push towards
Mm-hmm.
uh, pursuing my legal rights.
Precisely.
So that's how you kind of that's how there's a similarity between the two,
Mm-hmm.
where you're more goes into the strategy other than just the fact and the law. You're trying to see how quickly can I recover what
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking to recover in
Mm-hmm.
each plan of action, and then you pick which one best suits the situation.
And that's the interesting part, and we feel like that's where your memory kind of also, and your natural ability to pick up things also naturally falls into, that nature, because you have to pick up all these different details. I love how you say that um it's the same game but very different all the time, because there's always something. It's a different scenario all the time, right? Even if you're playing the same chess game, you're probably working with different scenarios, different environments, different people, and you have to catch on the nuances of, I love that, family dynamics, or perhaps different people, different personalities. And this is where your natural ability of memory comes into play, because you have to remember all these things, how they all come together, and then you kind of have to piece them together. Because if you can't piece them together in an effective way, then you miss on certain details, you miss on certain opportunities and chances where you could have closed this, in an effective way. How do you always try to approach this in wanting to, you know you know close it in a most amicable way? That's always the goal, right? um is there a particular case that stands out for you about that?
A particular case that stands out on how we got it resolved, or like that embodies my like approach to settlement.
Precisely, what is your approach to settlement, where you try to settle amicably all the time, or is it something that's not very common?
No, well, most cases settle.
Hmm.
The key is to settle on the terms that are most favorable to your client.
Right, of course.
You can't be sorry. When you're in the middle of a
Hmm.
lawsuit, you have to
Hmm.
portray strength,
Right.
right? You want to portray strength. You don't want to seem weak, because that will make the prospects of settlement seem makes them less likely.
Of course.
So you want to hold your cards close to the vest until there's a point where you're close to settlement and you could be maybe a little bit be more candid with your adversary. But the way I like to try to settle cases is, I'm not a fiery person. I won't call my adversary and curse them out or yell at them, which is common with a lot of attorneys that are litigators.
Hmm.
The way I approach it is, I speak to them with respect.
Of course.
I treat my colleagues with respect.
Hmm.
And if we
Hmm.
disagree, then that's the end of the we disagree, that's fine.
Yes.
I'll take the litigation route if that's the way you're going to be about it.
Hmm.
And there were plenty of cases, one in particular that I'm thinking about, which was in bankruptcy court, and the parties hated one another. There was a lot of acrimony between the two parties.
Hmm.
But the attorney on the other side, I got along great with. He's an attorney I respect, so much so that we were at a settlement meeting, and his client said, "Well,
Hmm.
your client may be hiding assets."
Right.
I go, and this is what I said to the man verbatim. His attorney's right next to him. I go, "You're sitting next to," and I'm talking about his attorney, "one of the most respected bankruptcy attorneys in New York State.
Hmm.
You should trust him. If my client were hiding assets, he would have found it. You hired a great attorney. Trust him. I'm not asking
Interesting.
you to trust me. Trust the man who I would hire if I had to file for bankruptcy,
Hmm. Hmm.
because he's the one sitting next to you. He's the one you retained. If my
Right.
client had assets that were not disclosed, he would have found them already."
Interesting.
And the attorney, the party had nothing to say to that. What is he going to say?
Of course.
Right?
I
He
agree.
was using a hypothetical to counter my settlement
Hmm.
offer.
Hmm. Hmm.
And rather than try to disprove the hypothetical, I said, you should trust your attorney who's telling you right now, right? Implicitly telling you that that hypothetical is not a reality.
Hmm.
So we were actually able to get that case to settle. It was not easy. It took a lot of go rounds, a lot of in-person meetings, but fundamentally there was respect between us, and
Hmm.
we treated each other with respect. And if the other person was saying no, that settlement offer is not going to happen, we just told each other right then and there,
Right.
that's
Right.
not happening.
Precisely.
Right? This for
Mhm.
just honest with each other, and it got the deal done. The court was pressuring us to get a deal. He's like, either get settled or go to trial. Like, that's where you are right now.
Mhm.
And this was in the Southern District of New York, and the judges there were excellent judges,
Right.
brilliant,
Right.
top quality judges,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they will give you slack to get a case settled as long as it seems like you guys are really progressing.
Right.
But he was running out of patience, but we got it done and the case settled. But that kind of embodies my approach, right? Everyone at that point in time knew all the facts. Everyone knows the law. Let's talk practically. How is this
Precisely.
practically going to work out, and it
There's no
did.
point in intimidation tactics, so to speak, right? Like the that
Sometimes
part.
there are.
Sometimes I was gonna say that part of the game does probably come. The probably part of the game
Sometimes,
probably is necessary sometimes, and you have to make those chess moves sometimes. But at the same
right,
time, you have to respect that your opponent is just as experienced as you are. Is just as just also wants the same results that you do for the best for their clients, and also wanting that that kind of equilibrium where you decide on
right,
what's both for your best for your clients, best for their clients, but also you each other as both as attorneys and litigators, and trying to just come up with that negotiation to
right.
come to a peaceful close, so to speak. These are the stuff that I'm very interested about, Tom. Can you share to us another particularly challenging case, one that really stands out for you, where you worked on your approach, you helped achieve a successful outcome, one that really stood out to you? Talk to us about that.
There's a couple. It's funny. I took this class, and I went to St. John's
Right.
Law, which is in
Hmm.
Queens, New York, where I'm from. And my last year of law school, we had this course. It's called ADR, right? Alternate dispute resolution, which is
Right.
just settlement, right? You're trying
Hmm.
to, or arbitration mediation. You're just trying to settle it without going to a lawsuit.
Right.
And it was run. The course was taught by a very experienced and respected litigator,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
right? And he was so funny. At the time, I didn't understand where he got his confidence from
Hmm. Hmm.
because I wasn't a litigator yet. I was just a law student.
Right.
So he was trying to teach us how to settle, and his tactics were hysterical, but they were so likable. You couldn't get mad at him. So he said, if we have a dispute, I always invite them to my office, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'll sit them down, and I always have them come at like 11 a.m. right before
Right.
lunch,
Hmm.
because people will start about with what's non-negotiable,
Right.
right? So they'll start off and say, I need to walk out of here with $1 million, nothing
Exactly.
else.
That's it.
And then he goes, what I would do is I would tell them what my offer is. I would say, well, how's 500,000? And they would say, that's it. I'm getting up. I'm leaving.
Mhm.
And what he would always say was, hold on. Let me just get your lunch order before you. Let me get your lunch order. Let's eat lunch. And no. I need to leave. I need to leave. Hold on. I'm just trying to get your lunch order. You want the Caesar salad or the Cobb salad?
Mhm.
He goes, no one's going to tell you no. They're
Mhm.
always going to say, I'll take the Caesar salad.
Right. Right.
So he would order them lunch. Then they would talk after they just discussed lunch
Right.
items. Now everyone's kind of calm.
Mhm.
And he would say, listen, I
Guards are
get the
down.
million, but this is why I can't do it. He goes, now they're there. They just ordered lunch, so they're not leaving. Now I have them.
Right.
And now we're eating. Now we're just a little bit more social.
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
we get to the number. I just keep them in the room, but I
Interesting.
make it seem like it's their decision to stay in the room. And he's a very well respected litigator, like publishes, partner in a major firm, publishes
Mhm.
articles on a weekly basis. His
Mhm.
father was a very, very prominent attorney and judge,
Mhm. Mhm.
who was also an alumnus of St. John's, and that was his approach, and it was something that worked for me. It was
Right.
something I could see because I'm not someone who's going to yell at somebody else. Like if I
Right.
called, there's times where I've flipped out
You
on an
had to.
attorney,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I've always called and apologized to them afterwards
Of
and said,
course. Mhm.
you know, shouldn't have lost my cool. I'm sorry about that.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then usually we get that case settled afterwards because they saw at that point in time that, I do have
Mhm.
a boundary
Precisely.
and they crossed it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. And
Mhm.
there, and that caused me to lose my temper. But
Mhm.
same thing likewise. I've had attorneys call me, flip out at me, and they'll call me later and say, sorry about that. Caught me on a bad day. But I'm trying to think of a time where there's so many that I'm
Right.
trying to think of a particular resolution that I was proud of.
A particular
There's,
resolution that you were proud of, and you're having a hard time thinking about that, Tom. Like, come on, like, there's
well,
got to be a
there's,
lot, right?
No, sometimes they're small. You know what I mean? Sometimes they're small. Sometimes
Right.
it's a resolution that you got because you did something that was contrary to your usual MO, right? So
Interesting.
if I'm sometimes my tactic has, I got one.
There you
There
go.
was
There
this
you
one, yeah, there was this one where civil litigation lawsuit, Southern District of New York. So again, you
go.
know, big court, good judge,
Hmm.
and my adversary was just a better attorney than me. He was
Wow.
more experienced, right? He was like
Okay.
10 years older than me. At the
Hmm.
time, I was 5 years out of law school. He was like 15, right?
Okay.
So he just had 10,
Whoa.
10 years from year 5 to year 15 is just a massive amount of experience.
Yes.
And he was just a better attorney at the time.
Wow. Okay.
And I assessed that very quickly,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Very, and it's not, keep in mind, it's not a matter of better. He's just more experienced, right?
Right.
Any
Right.
trick I had learned up until that point in time, or any procedural posture that I could take that would leverage him, he saw it coming and counteracted it before I did it.
Right. Okay.
And when he deposed my client, it was a textbook deposition, like
Whoa.
one of the best depositions I've ever seen someone
Whoa.
conduct.
Okay.
You're entitled to 7 hours on the record time. He used all 7 hours.
Oh my goodness.
We were
Wow.
there. We were there for like, on the record time, 10 hours. We were in that
Hmm.
deposition. It was perfect. And he's a friend now,
Okay.
right? I
Okay.
check in with him,
Hmm.
and we settled that case on very favorable terms to my client. He wanted like 500 grand. I think we settled, you know, a fifth of that,
Wow.
right? And it
Wow.
was because I assessed in my mind where he was strong and where he was weak.
Okay.
And I leaned on the weak part as much as I could,
Okay. Of course. Of
right?
course.
And I just whenever we would have settlement discussions, I would never give in to him. Never
Oh.
ever. No matter how much I wanted to, he a lot of things he was right on. It's very difficult to say to someone you're wrong on that when you
Mm-hmm.
know they're not,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
just played, when he would say something to me, I would use tactics like, "Well, I have you here, right?" And I wouldn't say anything. I would just long
Whoa.
pause.
Interesting.
And to not say anything, it's like that you could gain a lot of leverage by that, by not filling the void with sound when
Right.
it's uncomfortable to do that. You could gain a
Mm-hmm.
lot of leverage.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I would just use these negotiation tactics as
Yes.
best I could,
Uh-huh.
and eventually got a great resolution from my client against
Wow.
an attorney that I was outmatched against. I'm okay with
Wow.
saying that. Right
Wow.
now, if you ask me, I'd whoop his ass. But that was it's
Okay. That's
it's
so
5
funny.
years later, but at the time, and then when we were done, I called him. I said, "Listen, I have to tell you, you're an exceptional attorney.
Mm-hmm.
I really
Mm-hmm.
learned a
Wow.
lot from you during this case."
Mm-hmm.
And he referred me cases after that. He's like,
Oh, interesting.
he goes, "Don't take this the wrong way, but
Yeah.
for a young attorney, you're a
Wow.
killer.
Wow.
You just
Wow.
it was a really, really, those cases are the best because you learn so much. It was like a
Mm-hmm.
crash course. The next deposition I had
Mm-hmm.
was mirrored the way he did his,
Okay.
and I was in there for like 6 hours, right?
It,
It was,
wow.
and
There
I
you go.
got every piece of information I needed out of my
Exactly.
witness on that case.
Exactly.
But you learn, cases like that, you learn something from them, and you learn
Mm-hmm.
something about yourself. Like if I'm in a situation where I am unmatched,
Okay.
where I am outmatched rather,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
what do you do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you gain confidence that way, right?
That's
There were
interesting.
situations where your back was against the wall and you maneuvered
Exactly.
away to get a good result for your client, even with the cards stacked against you. So that's got to be. I forgot about that one.
That's got to be a
That's got to be.
real standout for you. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. You not only came out, a better attorney. You not only came out with, learning from the other attorney as well, you actually gain a friend as well. Like you said, that's that you
Yeah,
couldn't have
yeah.
asked for a better outcome than that. A great outcome for your client and a great outcome from yourself. I love it. I love stories like that, Tom. Thank you so much for sharing us that
No problem.
story. And the way you describe your approach and the way you describe. Have you seen you've probably seen Daredevil, right? On
Yeah,
Netflix.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Daredevil
what a
TV
great
show. That
show.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. Right. So you have this. You have, of course, I forget his name. His lawyer name
Matt or
really
Foggy?
Matt. Right. Okay. So you have Matt
Yeah,
Murdock. Right. You have Matt Murdock, of
yeah,
course, and then you have Froggy. Froggy's like
yeah.
that likable side. Like
Yeah,
everyone
yeah,
likes
yeah, yeah.
Froggy. Right. You got Matt, who's like, you kind of have like a level of immediate sympathy for the blind guy, right? But he's pretty
Right.
good. Like right away, you're always thinking, But then you got Froggy, who's balancing that out. I love it. It's like you're a combination of both these lawyers, is what in my mind is what I imagine. And I believe in that first season as well, they came up with this really really good attorney as well that they came up against, and Matt had to balance his superhero life and his lawyer life at the same
Yeah.
time.
Who is
Very
the? I'm
interesting.
trying to think, see that show was the best.
That
When
first
they
season was the
canceled it, I
best.
oh my god, it was so good. I was
So
so
good.
upset when they canceled it. No,
Oh yeah.
season 2 was good too
Yes,
when
it
the
was also.
Punisher,
Yes, it was
when
also.
that he
Very
was
good.
great as the Punisher.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of who the attorney they dealt with. But yeah, it's there's no doubt about it. There's sometimes you're gonna get come against attorneys that there's a lot of times you're coming against a firm that have better resources than you
Of
or
course.
more bodies they could throw at you, so they have more time to devote to the case.
Hmm. Hmm.
That never really intimidated me because in my mind, I've always been like, if I need to work the next week, sundown to sun up to beat you, that's what I'll do.
Of course. There you go.
But there's other times where you're just one to one,
Hmm.
that person's bigger and badder, then there's always going to be that scenario. And for the attorney who was his name's Scott, I'm sure there's attorneys that he came up against and he thought to himself, wow, like,
Hmm.
toe to toe, this guy might take me to school. And
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
learned, right?
Uh-huh.
It was so he had he went to Harvard Law. He was just a really smart guy. There's no way to
Right.
cut it.
Right.
And he was an interesting guy as well. He
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
took a leave of absence from the law for like a year and went abroad and studied coffee. Like, just a guy who was intrigued by different things. So, there's always there's always someone bigger and badder out there, and you have your job to do. Your
Of
client's
course.
life, oftentimes, their financial life is hanging in the balance. So you have to you have to figure it out. You have to
Yeah.
find the weak point, understand it as well as your strong points, and be able to leverage it as best as you can. And understand where you're weak,
Of course.
right? Don't
Of course.
ignore it.
Of course.
Some people like my wife always used to say that her father was an attorney also. His defense was a really, really, really good offense,
Oh.
right? Like he would just, he wouldn't worry about you punching him. He was just focusing on how hard his punch was going to be.
Of course.
And in a lot of ways, there's wisdom to that. But in my opinion, I can't proceed with the case ignoring my weaknesses.
Of
I
course.
don't think it serves me or my client.
Hmm.
So if you could understand it and just get okay with it and understand how you're going to parry
Hmm.
to deal with it, then you'll be fine, right? No matter who you're
Precisely.
against.
Precisely. Much like the alter ego of Matt Murdock coming up,
Yeah.
getting up after a few punch, after a few, getting down, getting beat up. He got his ass kicked so much in that show. It's like, so many times, right? But it's like, I love that. I love how you pictured that analogy of like kind of, um, taking the punches, but at the same time knowing where you're weak at, because then you can address it. You can be better. You can improve. And this gets me curious, Tom, as we near the end of this, start wrapping this up. Does this approach apply to the Frank law firm as a whole? How do you guys approach your cases, your legal battles? How do you try to induce this kind of values that you have personally and apply that to the firm as a whole? How has that worked out?
It's worked out well. The way we do it across the firm is pretty much the same. We're not disrespectful to anybody.
Mhm,
We don't let anybody disrespect us, but we're not disrespect to our adversaries.
mhm.
If our adversaries needs an accommodation in a case like an extension of time or an adjournment, we always grant it. We never say no,
Right.
right? As long as it's a professional courtesy. If they're getting carried away, you have to, you got to pull back on the leash. But that's kind of our MO, where we show respect to our adversaries, our clients, and our colleagues. And the most important thing that I impress on everyone else is, don't tell me we're doing something because that's how it's always been done. I don't want to hear that. That's not
Of
an
course.
answer.
Hmm.
Don't tell me this is industry practice or this is standard. I don't know. I To me that's not persuasive at all. So
Hmm.
if you're dealing with an adversary on a contentious issue, if you try to sit there and tell them, well, this is standard practice,
Right.
that doesn't mean anything to them.
Of course.
Tell them the law or the case law or the statute that says that you're right. And then it's not contentious anymore.
There you go.
I need X because statute X affords me this.
Wow.
End of the conversation. What are they going to fight with you about?
Of course. Of course.
Right? This is what it is. So arm, you know, arm yourselves with the respect and knowledge. You have those two things,
Hmm.
it's very hard to fight with the person.
Hmm.
If you, a lot of times the people that you'll find that are confrontational
Hmm.
don't have a good grasp on the lore of the facts. They're insecure inherently
Yes. Hmm.
about their position.
Hmm.
So, one, pay attention to that. If they're like
Of
that, is
course.
that a personality flaw
Right.
or are they insecure about their position?
Hmm.
And when it's likely they're insecurity, then just say, listen, there's no point in getting into a verbal back and forth with them. The law says I'm entitled to Y, I'm going to get Y. If you don't want to give me Y, then I'll take my legal remedies
Of
elsewhere.
course. Of course.
And that's kind of how we instill it throughout the firm, so that we're not, putting out fires because other people in the office, got into a shouting match with an attorney at the other side, other firm or something like that.
And that's an interesting part. I love that approach because you mentioned that respect, like how when you talk to people with respect, it breaks down their guards, right? It kind of catches them off guard, like, wow, this guy's so nice. Why is he talking to me this way, right? And it's just such a that's why it's such an effective approach. And at the same time, you guys mentioned that like looking at confrontation, people looking at why is he confrontational. I would also add that sometimes, actually, most of the time, people who are very confrontational actually do not have the you know, actually do not have the stamina to continue that confrontation because they're
Right.
just trying to intimidate you at that very first and try
Right.
to catch you off guard, but you catch them off guard even more with the respect that you respond with. And I love that approach. I love that it is a core approach at Frank Law Firm. Tom, I love the stories that you've been telling. I enjoyed this thoroughly, and your approach totally, and your insights in commercial litigation. Everything that you do is very, very interesting. I would love to give this opportunity to ask you what is the future for Frank Law Firm, and where can we connect with you guys?
Well, the future, that's a little bit more difficult to answer, but you could connect with us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Our website is www.frankfirmpc.com.
All right.
The future for us is just, we're very purpose driven attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we handle a case, we look at it as we're helping this person with usually what's a difficult time in their life, whether they're dealing with a lawsuit or
Of course.
bankruptcy or a business dispute.
Of course.
And when that's what you're servicing, you're not looking at the amount of money you're going to get from it. You're looking at, this person was looking at this as like an Armageddon. This was their
Wow.
apocalypse.
Wow.
And, the amount of times clients tell us, I can't sleep at night, all these things, like everyone's been there. You know how difficult that is
Of course.
when you're carrying around that stress.
Hmm.
And to have that same client call you a couple of days later after you've resolved the case and say, I can't believe that's done. I can't believe it's out of my life. I've never
Oh wow.
slept better. Like those things, they sustain you as a person. You feel like you've provided something. So I don't know what the future holds, but if it holds that, I'm okay with it.
That's interesting. Of course, I mean, it's always that, wanting the best for your clients at the end of the day and for everyone really. And I love that. I love that you said that you're actually helping them out of their Armageddon, and that feeling must be very rewarding that you help
Yeah,
them get out of that kind of situation. Tom, it's been a fantastic time with you. Thank you so much. Of course, I invite everyone to go to the website. The website again is, what is it, Tom?
www.frankfirmpc.com.
All right, and I invite our audience and listeners to visit the site. Of course, in the site you will also find the firms, the law firms, Frank law firms, number of podcasts. They have That's Business, Resilient Entrepreneurs, Legal Advocates, and Willpower Defines the Leader. I understand these are also hosted by many different hosts of yours as well, part of the team. And, hey, I probably love to have them on the show. Why not, right, Tom? Um, but Tom, it's been fantastic, and I would love to. Where can we connect with you personally? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I was on Instagram. My page is still up. I'm just never on it because the doom scrolling was bad. So I had to stop. But
Right.
I'm on Facebook as well. So, you type my name into Facebook and Instagram, it'll pop up.
Another relatable thing about you, Tom, the doom scrolling. Everyone struggles with the doom scrolling, so
Yeah, it was
I
taking up
just
too
might
much
have to
time.
delete Instagram myself. Tom, it has been great. Thank you so much for your time. Um, uh, is there anything you'd like to share to the audience and the listeners one last time? Take us home.
There's nothing else. Thank you for having me, Josh. This was a great time. Anytime someone brings up Daredevil, which is like one of my favorite shows, it's a good time.
I
So
love it.
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. To all our audience and listeners out there, it's been a great one. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. See you on the next one.
All right, so here's the thing, we try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.